As I was reading over the founding of Liberty Common, Mr. Schaefer and I were talking about it just a few minutes ago, as I went through some of the various things that this school and this administration and the parents involved that you all have gone through to get to this point, Temperance is actually seeing through that entire thing, because there was no way to make this happen without that. On another level, driving up from Denver is another good example of temperance, because you have to be totally in control of your thoughts and actions there, because that's tough. And it's really funny to me that the name of the school would be Liberty Common, because as I went through all these things, I wondered if that was by design or happenstance, because, again, going back to Plato and Aristotle and all of these other thinkers on temperance, they all made the point, and here's the key to temperance, is that at the end of temperance is liberty. That's the point of it. You're not seeking this, you're not aiming for this, you're not aiming for moderation to prove you're better than anything or anybody. It is your path to liberty. That's a very important thing to remember. We've been talking about this, I've been talking about this on kind of a macro level. Thank you. A macro or a big picture level. In other words, all these big concepts. I want to kind of bring it down to a smaller level. What they would call those of you in the economics class, you know the difference between macroeconomics, microeconomics. I'm going to bring this down to a micro level. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. You heard some of the introduction about me, and you heard that I'm a writer. I am, and I wanted to be a writer since I was in 4th grade. So this is really the culmination of a dream. But you also heard that some things changed in my life to where I had time to write. What changed in my life is I went to prison. I went to prison for 10 years for securities fraud here in Colorado. I don't say that flippantly. There's a lot that goes into it. It's not something I'm proud of in any way, shape, or form, because I want to use that as an illustration for you. That's an extreme illustration, believe me, but you have to understand something. Liberty, I talked about liberty just a minute ago, freedom. Liberty has an evil twin called license, okay? And if you're not careful, if you're not involved in these things that we're talking about with temperance and with self-control, this evil twin that we call license takes hold of you. And before you know it, you're substituting license for liberty. And instead of having freedom, you're trapped. You're trapped by the things that you think you should have or the things that you can't have, the things that you think you should do or the things that you think you can do. And it's very different. It's very scary in a lot of ways. So, here's the reality. You know this at whatever age you're at. We all have stuff, right? We all have things that we struggle with. We all have different things that we can never understand somebody else's stuff. I've never in my life had a problem with drinking, with drugs, with gambling. And so I would look at other people that had those issues, and part of me would always say, wow, I don't get it. I don't get how you can't quit that. But that's because I didn't struggle with that. There were other things that I struggled with. The point of it is, this stuff that I'm talking about, listen to this, those things are important because what controls us is what defines us. Okay, I want you to think about that for a second. Those things that control us are the things that define us, the things that we're known by. Remember in talking about temperance, I made the point that I'm using temperance as a verb. So it's outwardly directed. So if I'm not careful, those things that are controlling me are going to impact the world around me. I had a family that my actions impacted very, very badly. I had friends that were impacted very badly by the things that I did. And that was a result of that. But see, here's the point. Here's the flip side of that. And this brings us back to the idea of temperance and self-control. It's important because the flip side of that is what we control, what we overcome, what we maybe master, those things that I'm talking about, that stuff, that defines the things that we impact. That's how we impact the world. I saw this firsthand. As I said, I spent 10 years in a bad environment, a very harsh environment. Everything you may have heard about prison is absolutely true. Actually, it's probably a lot worse. There's a lot of things that you don't know. But the point of it is, it was a great place. It was the place I had to be to learn the importance of temperance and self-control. And I was so fortunate over those years to see that as I learned those things, as I learned self-control, as I learned moderation in action, feeling, and thought, because that's where everything starts, I saw that it impacted the world around me, even in a prison setting. It does happen. It's very important because, again, temperance isn't something that we keep inside of us. If we're keeping it inside of us, it's controlling us. Okay? That's the point of why I want you to look at it as a verb. I mean, I look at this and why did Mr. Schaefer ask me to speak here? I mean, I'm a writer, but I write fiction. I don't write about deep things like this. I make up stories. You know, there's nothing really hard about that. But it's because of these experiences. I've seen liberty and I've seen license. And the path that you want to take at this point is that you want to embrace the temperance that we're talking about. And it is an ongoing thing. You have to understand it's a process. You will never wake up one day and say, I got it. Now I got it. Always remember it's a journey. It's not a destination, it's a journey. The idea of temperance. It is so exciting to see this as one of your core traits that you're working on, because that's so important. Again, you go back to this idea of license. And it's very deceptive, because it looks so much like liberty and it looks so much like fun. And what is license? It's the throwing off of these restraints, right? We talked about temperance as moderation in thought. License is just throwing off the moderation. It's here. That candy is there. I can have as much as I want. Why can't I? It's there. It's there to be eaten. That's the difference. And as you continue to work through this, I hope that you come to see this in all the things that you do. You guys, temperance exposes license for what it is. If you do this, if you continue on this path that you're on, and you continue to work for this moderation, you will recognize what I'm talking about because you'll see it clearly. This isn't anything that really makes your life hard. I had a great 10 years, as stupid as that sounds, because I was able to change those things. And I found that whether it's temperance that I'm seeking, fortitude, justice, or any of those, they're mostly a commitment on my part. I have to be committed to them. That's why I keep stressing that I'm using the Greek word as a verb, because I want you to see that. It won't come upon you. Your neighbor can't do it for you. Your parents can't do it for you. Your teachers can't. It's something that you seek, but you seek it all the time. And you don't worry about it when you say, well, this person's doing better than I am. That's not important. It's your journey. That's kind of the exciting part. Have any of you ever been to the ocean? Yeah, you've been to the ocean. Okay, if you're in the ocean, you know how big the ocean is. If you're in the ocean in a boat, and there's nothing but the boat, it's kind of a scary place, isn't it? Because the waves, the wind, everything can sink you. You can't see anything because it's so huge. But think about this for a second. If you take that same boat, you put a sail on it, you put a till on it, and you put a few other things on that boat, suddenly the ocean isn't scary. That great expanse of the ocean, it's not that bad because you can go where you want to go. The wind, the waves, they actually add to your enjoyment. The reason I'm bringing this up is, you guys, you are inheriting a chaotic world, which is what the ocean is. The ocean is chaotic, and that's what you're inheriting. But if you equip yourself, if you go out into that ocean with the sail on it, with the till on it, with the lessons, with the supplies that you need, all of a sudden the expanse doesn't bother you. It's kind of nice because you can go where you want. And the waves and the wind, they just make the ride more enjoyable. And that's what life is. And that's the difference between going through life committed to this idea of temperance and going through life with being unconcerned about it. Going through life unconcerned about it, I promise you, you're going to be in that boat in the middle of the ocean with no till, with no oar, with no food, with no anything. And the ocean, the expanse is going to terrify you because the world has some scary parts to it. But if you equip yourself, and I'm telling you this is one of the most important pieces of equipment that you can give yourself. If you equip yourself, you'll enjoy the ride. And not only that, like I said, you'll impact the world around you. Whether it be your school, as you grow up, your children, your friends, your family. You will impact everybody around you and everything that you touch. It's really, the beauty of it is, and I'm saying this from experience, having gone through a good part of my life without any moderation, and then understanding it and recognizing it, I can tell you it's a much funner ride. It's much more enjoyable. I haven't missed a thing. I haven't missed a thing. It opens new doors for me. So, as we remember, that world is chaos. And you have to have everything that you can going through it. I want to make one more point about this. There's another characteristic, I'm going to try the word one more time, sophrosune, that's the Greek word, is boldness, even audacity. If you go through some of the writings of Plato, and you go through some of the things of Paul and Peter, Peter, the Apostle Peter, writes in 1 Peter 1:13, in temperance, prepare yourself for action. That's the point of it. Temperance is to prepare you for what it is that you're doing. And I want you to understand that part of it, that there is a boldness that goes with it. Why do you need boldness? Because you're going to impact the world. You're going to, and by the world, I might just mean the person next to you. That's a good impact. Temperance is a verb. It's outwardly directed. It's got to take you into everything around you. So, with that in mind, as I mentioned that quote from Peter, and some of the things from Plato, and even some of the things in Buddhism, which is really surprising to me, they push for audacity, they push for boldness in temperance, which is a different way to look at it. It's almost, I don't know, like a dare. And so I want to close with this, and then we'll open it up to some questions. And my question to you, and you don't have to answer this, but I hope you'll ask yourself this, is what will you dare to be? Because that's the only thing that's going to keep you in any of these attributes. That's the only thing that's going to hold you back. What will you dare to be? I think if you equip yourself, you can go out, any one of you can go out, and you can master that ocean, and you can master that chaotic world. I'm going to stop there. Thank you very much. If there's any questions. Any comments or questions? How was I inspired to write my books? That's a really good question. I started out writing books more on self-help, something like that. And then I reached the point where I said, I don't really want to do that for money. And I got an idea instead. My books are a series. I have a series of books out. And I got an idea for a fictitious character about a guy who was given everything in his life and ruined every relationship he was ever in through lying and deceiving and manipulating. And the guy ends up going to prison for securities fraud. It's totally fictitious. There's some coincidence in it, but it's totally fictitious. But the point of my books that I write, there's a recurring character named Jack Reno. And Jack Reno is he's a guy that messes things up, and he goes to prison, and he knows he needs to change, but he doesn't know how to change. That's really kind of the point of it. I've had the first 3 books that are out. In each one of them, Jack continues to get himself into these situations where he knows better, but he still gets himself into it. So he knows he needs to change, but he hasn't yet, and he doesn't know how. So, but it's all coincidence. There's no Yes? There's 3 books. The first one is called Walking with Ducks. The second one is called Scorpion Sting. And the third one is called Wrestling with Gorillas. Jack Reno has an uncle that he refers to, a fictitious uncle, that he refers to throughout the book, and he's always quoting his Uncle Bob. He has an Uncle Bob, and Uncle Bob says things like, it's hard to soar with eagles when you have to walk around with ducks. That sort of thing. It's very, and actually this is another good example. I came out of prison after 10 years, and you never know what's going to happen in a situation like that. But I found that people will give you another chance. I was very fortunate. I sent my first book off to 6 publishers, and I never got a turned out letter. Everybody wanted to publish it. It's been really, talk about a ride, it's really been a fun ride. So, yes? Yes, there is a 4th Jack Reno novel called Lassoing Squirrels coming out next spring. And I actually had this great fortune through those books. I got contacted to write a nonfiction book about a true story of a man whose daughter was kidnapped and taken to Costa Rica. It's actually a very exciting thing. So yeah, Lassoing Squirrels will be out in the spring, and hopefully this other one will be out after that. Oh, yes, ma'am. Why did I decline running for governor? Are you serious? Who on earth would want to run for governor? You know what? It's actually a good question. Because strangely enough, at that point, there were people who wanted me to do that. And it was kind of a thing of the moment. I actually think I had enough support to have gotten on the ballot at that point, but part of it was I knew I wasn't ready. I knew I wasn't, I mean, even then, I knew I really wasn't a good man, and I would have done nothing, but the people who believed in me, because really and truly, all kidding aside, some people really believed enough in me to do that, and it would have been a slap in their face. That was really the main reason. Plus, I just don't want to be in politics. I don't know why anybody would. Never understood. Now, I've never had a problem supporting some people who want to be in politics. I just don't want to do it myself. Anything else? Anything else? Yes? I'm sorry? I couldn't hear this. Oh, how did I gain temperance? That's another great question. Again, through this period, much like my fictitious character in my books, I knew that I needed to change. And the state was kind enough to give me the time to do that. So this is how I found out that it is a process. It's a daily process. And it's a commitment. Because, you know, in prison, you're around guys all the time who know they need to change. But they don't really care how in a lot of cases. I really became obsessed with how to change. And I found out, that's where I found out firsthand, that this whole concept of temperance, of self-control, is very outwardly directed. Because I found that the more that I interacted with other convicts of all kinds, I found that the more I worked with them and worked in their lives, that the more I was changing. It's this funny thing. You set out to help somebody change, and then you wake up one day and say, wow, that guy really changed me, you know? So that was where I learned that all of these things that we're talking about, it has to start with my commitment to it. I have to want it. And that's why I keep stressing it. I hope you understand that why I think it's important to understand this as a verb, as an action word. Because I could have sat on my bunk and watched TV for 8 years, 10 years. I know a lot of guys who did that and just wanted that change to happen. I didn't really want to be the guy I was. I never wanted to be that guy. I just became that guy. So in the same way that you become a person who's not a nice person, it's possible to use these things to go the other direction. But it has to start with I want to change. And I'm going to do whatever I have to do to change. I'm sorry? Oh, what is security fraud? Man, I asked to state that myself. Security fraud is a financial crime. It's borrowing money and using it for something other than what you say you're going to use it for. But yeah, I said the same thing. What the heck is security fraud? How can that be a crime? 1994. Yeah, it was 1994. It was a good year. Say it one more time, please. Was there one specific person that helped me to change? Well, it's a great question. I can name a bunch of different men through that period. I have a son, and I will point to him as probably, he was the most important thing in helping me change. As far as a daily focus of, you know what, I can't give up on this, I can't stop this, I have to change. And I was really fortunate, if such a thing is possible in prison, because everywhere I went, I was in 5 different facilities. And I'll tell you something else about securities fraud. They don't treat it like they say on TV. I never got to go to one of these camps. I went to 2 maximum security and 2 medium security prisons. So I found that everywhere I went, for some reason, the staff there would put me in a position of trust. They would put me in some position of trust. And that became important to me in that outward sense, because it was important to me to show this change, not just to the staff, but to the other men around me. So the thing about prison, it changes all the time. People are always moving around. It's not like Shawshank Redemption, where you stay in the same cell for 20 years. That never happens. They move you about every 6 months. And so you continually have this turnover in the people that you know. But that's good too, because you get this new sense of working on this or working on that, or learning from somebody else. Anything else? License is the exact opposite. License is, if I got an itch, I'm going to scratch it. You know, I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm going to do what I want to do, when I want to do. That candy's in that basket, I'm going to eat it. What's the difference? I'm not hurting anybody. License involves, liberty is real simple, because you have these concepts of temperance and fortitude and prudence and things like that that will guide you towards it. License is much more, it's very situational. It's, I'm not hurting anybody by doing this. Yeah, I borrowed money. I said I was going to use it for this. I'm going to use it for that. What is that? The bank doesn't care. What do they care? They lend me the money. That's license. License is using the situation to justify what I want to do at that moment, versus living freely, knowing the way I should go. It's a big difference. Okay, anything else? I'm going to stop right there. I'm going to thank you all once again very much.
Again to Mr. Nalitz. Next, we're going to talk about the Temperance poster. This is one of the many posters that's going to go up around the school, demonstrating each of the capstones. And to talk about this, we have Ben Lyceum.
shown in our ways that we exhibit our character. Alright, so this is our poster. So at the top, we have 3 figures that exhibit temperance. And they're all figures from different parts of human culture. And then next is the definition of temperance we have on our...
Who are those people?
I'll explain that. Alright, next we have the definition of temperance that we have on our capstone posters that are all around the school. Third, we have the definition of temperance that comes from the foundation stones that you have in the elementary school. And then we have some cartoons that were drawn by some students. So the first figure I chose was Confucius. And he taught temperance in all his teachings, and all his students followed temperance. His quote, "When anger rises, think of the consequences," shows just how using temperance can advance yourself as a person. Next is Jackie Robinson. He had to exhibit temperance no matter what, or his entire quest to become a baseball player in the major leagues, which were all white. He would have been kicked out if he had not exhibited temperance, because people were constantly insulting him because of his race, and he had to hold in his anger in order to attain his goal. Next is Penelope from the Odyssey. She had to exhibit temperance in 2 ways. First, she had to not take another husband because Odysseus was gone for 20 years. And by not taking a husband, she showed that she was a very temperate woman, that she could contain herself from her loneliness and unwedness in the ancient world. Second, she had to contain her anger at the suitors and keep up the hospitality that was traditional in ancient Greece. And stay a good hostess, even though they were draining their home resources. And if you want to look at it more closely, you can look for the article. It will be close there. Thank you.
By Mrs. Garland and Dr. Walker. Okay, I'm presenting the Junior High Award for Character today, and the recipient of this award exemplifies 3 really important virtues consistently. These virtues are gratitude, prudence, and temperance. Now, this young man, sorry girls, it's a young man this time, this young man always has a smile and a thank you for his teachers every single day, without fail. This student also is always on task during class. He is industrious, he is attentive, he is getting his work done, and he just has a great attitude. He also participates in class, and he really is a joy to have as a student. Now we appreciate and we recognize this young gentleman's outstanding attitude, and we want to recognize that today. The recipient of the Junior High Character Award today is Josiah Baptista.
today is the Capstone Award. This is for a student that has shown at least 3 of these capstones. I feel like the student chose all of them, including wisdom. This student came to Liberty as a freshman. He was new here, and he showed a lot of fortitude because there were a lot of kids that came to Liberty the first year and didn't stick it out. And he has been on varsity sports. He's been on varsity soccer for 4 years. He's been on varsity baseball for 4 years. Last year, he was the academic all-star for CHSA. He's also had academic honor roll for 4 years. Another capstone that he shows is patriotism. And he was in Boy State, which is you're selected as a junior to be with the American Legion. And he also volunteered as a student election judge. This student also shows gratitude in all kinds of different ways. He volunteered for medical services in Peru. He helped with vision screening there. He worked with Project 54, which raises money for youth ministry all over the world by Climate 14ers. He and his family painted the teacher's lounge to make it really nice for us. And the other thing I want to say about this student is that he is someone who shows so much humility. You probably, I'm sure a lot of you have no idea who I'm talking about because this kid never brags. He always has integrity. He shows a lot of honesty. And so I think that Troy Belleville richly deserves
Josh. Oh, all right.